A man in a worn-out jacket stood beside a broken race car, his hands blackened with grease, his eyes calm but tired. The engine had failed just minutes before the biggest test run of the season. Engineers panicked. Executives shouted. Millions of dollars were on the line. But the man didn't wait for permission. He stepped forward, opened the hood, and started fixing it like he'd done it 1,000 times before. What happened next would cost him his job, and reveal a truth that no one in that company was ready to face. Before we begin, take a second to support the channel. Like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Welcome to Echoes of Stories, where every story leaves a mark on the heart. The morning had started like any other at Titan Motors, one of America's most competitive racing companies. Sleek cars lined the test track, engineers moved with urgency, and the air buzzed with ambition. At the center of it all stood CEO Richard Holloway, a man known for precision, discipline, and zero tolerance for mistakes. Not far from the track, sweeping near the garage entrance, was Daniel Carter. Most people barely noticed him. He was the quiet janitor who came in early, left late, and never complained. A single father raising his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, Daniel worked 2 jobs just to make ends meet. To everyone else, he was invisible. But Daniel saw everything. He watched the cars roll in and out. He listened to the engineers argue about performance. And sometimes, late at night when no one was around, he would stand near the cars, his fingers brushing lightly against the metal, like he was remembering something. Because Daniel wasn't just a janitor. Years ago, he had been an engineer. Not just any engineer, he had been one of the original designers behind Titan Motors' early success. But after his wife passed away and life fell apart, he left everything behind to focus on raising Lily. No one at Titan Motors today knew that story. To them, he was just the guy with a mop. That morning, everything changed. During a critical engine test, one of Titan's newest race cars suddenly stalled. Smoke curled from under the hood. The team rushed in, confusion spreading quickly. "This can't be happening," one engineer muttered. "We checked everything." Richard Holloway stormed toward the car, his face tight with anger. "Fix it. Now." The engineers hesitated. They argued. They guessed. But no one touched the engine. And then Daniel stepped forward. He didn't ask. He didn't speak. He simply set his cleaning tools aside and walked up to the car. With steady hands, he opened the hood and leaned in, his eyes scanning every detail. "What are you doing?" one engineer snapped. Daniel didn't respond. He reached inside, adjusted a connection, tightened a component, and made a small but precise change that no one else had noticed. The entire garage went silent. "Hey! Step away from there," another voice shouted. But it was too late. Daniel closed the hood and nodded toward the driver. "Try it now." The engine roared to life instantly. Smooth. Powerful. Perfect. For a moment, no one said anything. And then the shouting began. Richard Holloway walked forward slowly, his expression unreadable. "Who gave you permission to touch that car?" Daniel wiped his hands on his jacket. "It just needed a small adjustment." "You're a janitor," Richard said coldly. "You don't touch million-dollar machines." Daniel looked down for a moment, then quietly replied, "I was just trying to help." Richard didn't hesitate. "You're fired." The words hit harder than any insult. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence. Daniel nodded once, as if he had expected it, and picked up his tools. No arguments. No anger. Just quiet acceptance. That evening, Daniel returned home to Lily. She ran to him, smiling, holding up a drawing she had made of a race car. "Look, Dad. It's like the ones you always talk about." Daniel forced a smile. "It's perfect." Did you fix any cars today? She asked. He paused, then gently said, yeah, one. But inside, something was breaking. The next morning, chaos erupted at Titan Motors. The same car Daniel had fixed began showing unexpected improvements. Its performance data exceeded every projection. Engineers were confused. They couldn't explain it. One senior engineer reviewed the footage from the previous day. He watched Daniel's movements carefully, his adjustments precise and confident. Then his eyes widened. Wait, that technique, that's impossible. What is it? Another asked. That's not random. That's original design logic, from the early Titan models. The room went quiet again. Who was that guy? Someone whispered. Within hours, they pulled old company records. Photos. Files. Names. And then they found it. Daniel Carter. Lead engineer. Prototype architect. The man who had helped build Titan Motors from the ground up. Richard Holloway stared at the file in disbelief. That janitor built our cars? No one answered. Because the truth was already clear. Richard drove personally to Daniel's small home that afternoon. It was a modest place, with a small porch and a child's bicycle leaning against the wall. Daniel opened the door, surprised to see him. For a moment, neither man spoke. Then Richard said quietly, I made a mistake. Daniel didn't respond. I didn't know who you were, Richard continued. Daniel looked him in the eye. That's the problem. You didn't try to know. The words hung in the air. Richard nodded slowly. You're right. Inside the house, Lily peeked around the corner, watching. I came to ask you to come back, Richard said. Not as a janitor, but as the engineer you always were. Daniel glanced at his daughter, then back at Richard. I don't need a title, he said softly. I just needed respect. Richard swallowed. You have it. Starting now. There was a long pause. Then Daniel stepped aside. Come in. We should talk. Days later, Daniel returned to Titan Motors, not in a suit, not in an office, but in the same simple clothes, working alongside the team. This time, people listened when he spoke. They asked questions. They learned. And Daniel shared everything he knew, not with pride, but with kindness. Because he understood something they didn't. Talent can be hidden. Titles can be misleading. But kindness reveals who we truly are. The CEO who once fired him became one of his strongest supporters. The engineers who once ignored him became his students. And the company? It became better, not just because of better cars, but because of better people. So the next time you see someone who seems invisible, remember this story. Because everyone carries a story you cannot see. And sometimes, the kindest thing you can do, is simply treat them like they matter.